Welcome to On the Ballot with Ballotpedia, where we connect people to politics by providing neutral, nonpartisan, and reliable information on our government, how it works, and where it's headed.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of On the Ballot. I'm Norman Leahy, your host. I'm a senior editor here at Ballotpedia. And of course, it's 2026, an election year, a major election year in the United States. And not only will there be midterms for Congress, but there will be tens of thousands of elections at the state and local level. And of course, Ballotpedia will be bringing you information on all of that. But working in the background of every election that there ever will be held this year are discussions between people, not only neighbors and friends and family, but people and politicians. And oftentimes, as we've seen over probably most of my lifetime, actually, those discussions and those interactions can sometimes get quite heated. And we are constantly looking for new ways to engage with one another and to produce not only productive, but maybe informative and transformative discussions. And joining me today are a couple of people who are working on that problem, working on it and around it. And I'm honored to be with her. One is an old friend and one is a new friend. Scott Rasmussen is the old friend. I don't mean to use that word "old" pejoratively.
Thank you,
Scott,
Norm.
because I am right behind you, brother. Scott is the founder of the Neapolitan Institute, and he is the president and honcho and chief bottle washer at RMG Research. And also joining us, very great to have you, is Yasmin Green. She's the CEO of Jigsaw, which is an incubator at Google. And Yasmin, I want to start with you because I was looking at Jigsaw's website. And on there, you have, like so many good websites do, a mission statement about what it is you do. And one of the things you talk about is we feel disconnected from the decisions and the systems that affect our lives, which is politics. And that internally you call this a structural agency deficiency. And then you think one of the ways to overcome this is to use technology, and specifically to use artificial intelligence. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, thank you. And it's really great to be with you, Norm. That's right. So Jigsaw is an incubator inside Google. And I sometimes say, there are many other parts of this company that are trying to take AI to new heights. We're trying to bring it back down to earth and make it useful for people in their lives. And so we're often trying to understand, what problems our technology not yet solving yet. And yes, we're so connected to information and to each other. Never before has that more been the case. And yet we seem to feel disconnected from the systems in which we live, the decisions that affect us. And the person in the street thinks of that, they experience that as the system's not working for me. I don't believe in institutions. I'm not sure the government can work. I don't trust media. All of these things that are big institutions and systems around us. And we thought, wouldn't that be a good, if we're going to create this super intelligence that's so powerful, the tech sector is doing a lot of problem solving with it, but wouldn't it be great if we could address societal challenges? And, the kind of tagline we use at Jigsaw is giving people more voice and choice in the world around them. And we're really interested in one of our portfolios in civic voice. People don't feel that they have political efficacy. They don't necessarily feel their government responds to them or that they can be heard by their political leaders. And the internet was supposed to be this kind of the digital public square, this new frontier for having ideas exchanged and to hear each other. And if we're honest, we haven't really scratched the surface of what's possible. And in some ways, we've actually set back our ability to talk to each other at all. And so the project that Scott and I are really excited to talk to you about today is a very interesting coming together around actually giving people voice, civic voice. And our genesis, we build tools at Jigsaw. It's mostly software engineers, but we have researchers and policy people here in our headquarters in New York. But we've been working for a long time on AI to enable conversations. The most popular free tool to manage comment spaces, to give you an example, is called Perspective API that our tool built. It's used billions of times a day, from the Wall Street Journal to the New York Times comment sections to Reddit and Wikipedia talk pages. So we've kind of understand the promise and also the shortcomings of the places that we have to talk to each other online. And we were really excited to get to team up with Scott to do something that is going to be really special for the 250th birthday of this country.
Well, and Scott, picking up on that, what is it that you have cooking? I mean, you're a man of great schemes and plans, and you're fascinating at the things. You've talked to millions of people. You've literally talked to millions of people over your
Actually, my
career.
company has talked to millions of people, but yes.
Well, you know what I mean.
Yes.
In your name, you've talked to millions of people. But tell us about
Well,
what you're working on.
I need to go back to where the project started. I'd been in touch with Yasmin's team. They were talking about ideas, and late last year, they said, we're working on this project in Bowling Green. And in February, they invited me up to Bowling Green, Kentucky, where they were hosting the largest town hall in history. It was a digital town hall. They got more than 10% of Bowling Green's residents to take part, which is remarkable for civic engagement. And I was brought in. I watched the project unfold. I talked to some of the city leaders and others. And I noticed there were a couple of really good things about the platform they had built, the conversation they structured. Because, Norm, if you just throw people into a room, you don't get a good conversation. What they did was found a platform or created a platform that could prevent the loudest voices from dominating, and also let everybody throw in ideas. And the ideas were bubbling up from the bottom rather than from the city leaders down saying, comment on this or that. I got a kick out of the fact that the most common topic was sidewalks. It wasn't great new infrastructure projects or a new, arena. It was sidewalks. We need better sidewalks. We need more sidewalks. So I was impressed with that. The discussion was a little chaotic, and the biggest problem for me as a pollster was it was not a representative sample. Coming out of that, we talked with the Jigsaw team and developed an idea. We wanted to host a national conversation with 5 people from every congressional district in America. Never been done before. Get them together and find a way to talk about America's founding ideals. What does freedom mean to you today? What does equality mean? How do those statements from our Declaration of Independence apply in the 21st century? And to make that happen, one of the first things we wanted to do was to enable people to tell us in their own words what these things meant, not me writing a question and say, do you agree or disagree? And Norm, just to give you a quick sense of how remarkable this project has been. If I ask, I do ask this every survey I do, what's the most important problem facing America? And I get an average response of 1 or 2 words. If I push and say, tell me in a sentence or 2, what's the biggest problem facing America? I get an average response of 8 words, and most of them are something like, I think the biggest problem is the economy. So I'm not really getting much. What we have developed and what Jigsaw's, all those engineers that Yasmin was talking about has developed is a tool that lets us get an average response of over 100 words per question, up to 140 words. That's significant because now you're talking paragraphs. You're hearing ideas and connections that those of us who live in the political bubble might not make. And this was the first part of the project where AI played a role, but we were trying to structure a conversation and we had a limited role for it. We asked an open-end question. And by the way, I had to learn to ask questions differently because you wanted to encourage people to really expand. After we got their first response, we wanted to encourage them to say a little more. And we had an AI prompt. We had the funniest question for me all year was, what's the personality you want for your AI prompt? Took a little experimentation, but we found something. And Norma, a part of this, and this, I keep coming back to the conversation design because it's so important. We had the AI encourage somebody to tell us more about what they had already said. We did not have 6 AI prompts in a row to take somebody down a rabbit hole. So we asked a question, we encouraged them to say more. We asked a different question, encouraged them to say more, showed them some information, and asked another question. It was a very orderly process. But in the end, we collected more than 1.6 million words from people all across the country about how they see these ideals in America today. And then the fun part of the conversation, we had them come back and we showed them what their their peers had said, what a group of randomly selected people from across the country said. And Yasmin talks about this like being at a dinner party. It's great, but what happens is, Norm, if I ask you a question, you'll say something off the top of your head. And then if you hear what Yasmin says, because you're in a conversation, you say, oh, yeah, I like that too. And you begin to learn and grow. So we had that conversation. And when we put it all together at the end, we're having people vote on statements that we think reflect their conversation, statements that we're asking them if should this be in a Declaration of American Ideals for July 4th, 2026. And if 2/3 of the congressional districts agree, we're going to put them in this declaration, as a representation of the common ground shared by the American people.
And so, in a way, then, what AI does is it works. It doesn't influence the conversation. It allows the conversation to develop.
Well, let me be clear. AI can do good things or bad.
Yeah.
The very first personality that we had was a little combative. I think people felt they had to justify their answer. We didn't want that. We wanted a tool that would be like you're having a beer or a cup of coffee with a friend. Well, that's really interesting, Norm. Tell me more about this. And then we cut it off and asked our own question next. So yes, that was a part of it. The next thing that AI did was when we got these million words that nobody could code on their own, we used AI to summarize them with a human in the loop. The human was a person on the Neapolitan staff. And when we presented a summary of it, really important part, again, to establish the legitimacy of this, if we said 943 people made comments supporting this general statement, we let you see as many of those statements as you want. We put 5 up right away for you to see. We put more up if you want to keep going. And in fact, if you really had time and you were bored to tears over the holiday break, you could read all million words if you want. We do want to be transparent about that, but it gives people a flavor and a sense. Okay, the AI said this, and now I'm reading these comments. I get what they're talking about.
What are the you're a pollster, Scott? Tell me what are the top lines?
The top lines are that people in America today do not talk like Thomas Jefferson and the founding fathers. The language has changed dramatically.
Sure.
But the core ideas are still there. The ideals of freedom and equality and self-governance shine through this document. There's a fringe that we found, small fringe on the left who reject these ideals with comments like the 1619 Project. There's some on the right who, sound like John Calhoun and the Confederates because they don't believe in equality. But those are fringe positions. The top line is that freedom and equality, self-governance, these attitudes are still what the vast majority of Americans cling to as the definition of our nation.
And Yasmin, what did you take away from these results?
Well, the starting point for us was Scott coming and joining us in Bowling Green. We were doing this kind of the largest town hall in U.S. history. We helped these 8,000 residents express 4,000 proposals, 1 million votes. We've done something really remarkable. And we were talking to Scott, and he said, I know this personally, and I know this through polling for so long, that there is a wisdom to and a commonality to the American values, and I'm intent on elevating the American voice. And I think that I see an opportunity with technology to do that. So that we were guided almost by Scott's North Star, which is for the 250th, anniversary of this country. I want to actually show, because I think for the first time we can do it because of the way AI is. I want to bring enough Americans together, and I want to let them speak without nudging or directing. And I want the data to basically prove this and to make this visceral for everyone else. So we started with this North Star, and where we ended up, and we branded the program "We the People," but where we ended up, and our goal, kind of as the technology partner, was, can we design a way to get to this outcome? If it's really there, Scott, like we will find it, for you. So where we ended up with We the People was a list of like these founding ideals that the AI kind of helped explore and surface, and the people validated. So 2,400 Americans across across demographics and the political spectrum, but also from 5 to 10 people from every congressional district across all 435. Again, because Scott was like, I want this to be representative. And then we, at each point, imagine if you were making a Google Maps for not for geographical terrain, but for opinion terrain. How would you begin to do that? And that's the task that Scott gave us. And that's why we were meeting kind of every week for 6 months to say, like, how would you gather the data points of opinion? You have to go and ask people, but you can't lead them. So we're like, let's recruit, let's create an opportunity for them to talk. I think that's been one of the revelations of the last couple of years, has been how effective AI is in conversation. Like that was not something that people, even in the industry, thought was coming a few years ago, was that the AI was going to be so kind of to feel like such a natural conversation partner or conversational assistant. So we said, okay, well, let's get people to talk. And the beautiful thing, like now we're taking turns to talk, and that's usually a very good, that's if one person's talking and no one else is talking, that's not really a great conversation. But it is a limit on how large conversations get. After 10 people together or 20 people together, the kind of requirement of turn taking starts to break down. But not when you do things virtually. So we got these 2,400 people, and we're like, everyone, you can talk. And they all talked at the same time because they were speaking to AI. But the wonderful thing is they got to say their piece, and we went from kind of memes to meaning. They spoke. And also they the next phase was listening and responding, but it's much easier to listen when you've said your piece. When you're carrying your opinion and you're really trying to listen, but your opinion is such a heavy weight in your mind. So we let everyone talk. And then Scott's like, I want them to see each other's opinion. So we kind of mapped, like you would imagine Google Maps for opinion. And we're like, look, there were 27, 28, look at the major opinions on freedom, equality. Look what America thinks. When we're online today, we have there is an innovation that is kind of underpinning social media, and that is the feed. The way to let everybody talk and to organize information so they can interact is a feed that shows you just a very little amount of the content at the top. And, we've come to see that the stuff that's, that we tend to gravitate to, or the stuff that drives engagement or money, is like sensational things, things that might not be true, things that are angry. But in this case, we didn't say, here, we'll show you just a few Americans who said the most, provocative thing. We said, here's the whole of the opinion landscape for American freedom and equality. So we were already we kind of threw out that, there's this axiom of the 99-1 rule to conversations online, that 90% of people are lurkers, 9% of people contribute a little bit, and then 1% drive everything. But here we're like, here's everyone's opinion. Every single American in this microcosm was represented. And then we said, respond. So we were kind of, to Scott's point about conversation design, I think that was the thing that we really cared about at Jigsaw, is can we design a conversation that works well when there's a lot of us? And the last phase was looking for where there was shared values, and we kind of used AI to predict. We had all these, unlike a pollster who's like, I'm gonna put some statements out there for people to react to. We said we'll use all the words, all the 1.6 million words, and we'll hypothesize what people agree on, and then we'll ask them.
Yeah.
And so I just say one metric that's really important we have a lot of metrics that are stunning, but the one that was really important to us, because you asked like what did we take away at Jigsaw, was we said the gold star for us is if we can build a conversation that people feel represented by. Because who feels represented by the conversations that's happening on social media or in a town hall? We want to go to these Americans and say, do you think your voice was represented in the process and the outcome? And 94% of people said that they felt represented across all, walks of life and across all political spectrums. So I think we did do something that's meaningful, and I think kind of proved Scott right in terms of his hypothesis also.
And Norm, I want to throw a couple things in here. First of all, now that it's worked, it seems really easy.
Okay.
We when Yasmin said we worked in partnership on this, I would go up to New York once or twice a month. They would have a table full of 17 really smart young engineers building this and trying things. And a lot of stuff we tried didn't work. The first time we tried it, we had to learn. So designing a conversation took effort. Second thing, for me, what was really important about that listening phase was, in a typical poll, you can leave somebody if you want to, or if you're Frank Luntz leading a focus group, you can lead the conversation where you want, or as a pollster, I can say experts say this, and I know it will influence the results. This was letting people hear other views, but without that bias. It was letting them hear views of people they didn't know, but were randomly selected. And the final piece is we were intent every step of the way on validating this outcome. Our theory was if we brought these people together in conversation, we would create some statements out of the conversation. The ones that were approved by 2/3 of the congressional districts should be things that the vast majority of Americans would agree on. So when all was said and done, I went back to the same tools I've used throughout my career, and we did a validation poll. We tested among people who had not been in the conversation about whether they agreed or disagreed with these statements, and the results were very exciting. So it did take a lot. This is not something you do on the afternoon of when you have a little extra time. It was a deliberate effort, took a lot of thought, a lot of planning, and a lot of really great talent to bring this result together. And we really can't wait to share this. We have a report online already with part of the results for the first phase, but we'll be doing more and more as July 4th, 2026 comes closer.
So this is not just a one and done. You're going to continue to do these discussions, correct?
Yeah,
So the universe of questions and responses that you get is going to grow much more than your initial report.
The initial report, we are thrilled with it, and we'd encourage everybody to study it and look at it. But we're going to be back in the field with a couple of other projects related to this, other questions in 2026, and that will be informing the July 4th results. And then I believe that this tool that is being developed, that we will be using it in lots of other applications, beyond the 250th birthday. It's a phenomenal way to listen to people. It's a phenomenal way to get insights. And Norm, I like I keep coming back to some of these core ideas, but one for me that's very important: when you listen to people and when you give them a chance to explain their thoughts in more than a yes, no answer, you learn surprising things. And I believe that that's going to be the real value of this product going forward, will be to say, hey, we can ask these questions and we can hear about things that none of us who talk politics every day would have ever imagined go together.
And you probably hit on it, but what was the thing that surprised you the most about what people told you? It doesn't have to be in your report. What surprised you the most in this? I'm frankly rather stunned that people would talk freely to AI.
So we were there. Part of the survey design up front, we told them what was going to happen. We told them about the AI prompts, but we also wanted to make it very clear that they could explore everything. I was stunned by the level of enthusiasm and participation from beginning to end. We invited people and told them it would be about a 20-minute conversation for each leg of this process. And because with something like this, you always, uh, we just test it. We're building something new. We don't know how it's going to work. In our first pilot run, for what we called round two, when you're listening to others and responding, the average participant stayed on for 40 minutes. We had no drop off, no significant drop off. They stayed on for 40 minutes and still said it was something that they enjoyed being a part of. One participant said that every politician in America should be forced to go through this because it made them think about something larger than themselves. So the fact that people were willing to engage was a big surprise for them. I knew they engaged to some degree. I mean, that is what I've been doing for a career, but the level of engagement was really surprising. And the other thing that I don't know if I would call it as surprising, but certainly encouraging. At the very beginning, before we took them through this process, 30-something% said that they thought most Americans shared some common ground with them on these ideals. And after going through the process and seeing others, that number jumped to over 70%. And I think there's a lesson in that. It's easy for us in the political world today to, if Team Red says something, Team Blue says it's wrong, and vice versa. I think we need to be lifting up that common ground a little more and letting people recognize it's there. And I think that would be, if nothing else comes of this project, that would be a great objective to try and achieve.
And Yasmin, this brings me back to where we started about getting people to feel like they do have a voice in the processes that affect them most directly. It seems like maybe there's hope. Maybe.
I believe so. I think the thing that we learned in Bowling Green and the thing that we're seeing with We the People is if you give people the opportunity, they really do want to be in conversations about their future. They want to help shape them. I think sometimes, we look at the way conversation plays out on the internet and we have developed kind of societal self-loathing a bit. We're like, we're individually okay, but together we're no good. We can't function or we don't agree. But those conversations are designed in a way that doesn't enable us to really hear each other. And the takeaway for me that was the most surprising was that was just how much people want to feel heard and how they can be given that opportunity, and they were in this case. So going into the survey, we asked people, "Do you feel heard by fellow Americans?" And 30% of people said yes. And then this was an hour of being in conversation. You weren't, going away on a holiday resort with fellow Americans. You were just in an hour of kind of AI facilitated conversation. And then we asked people at the end, "Do you feel heard by fellow Americans?" And the number jumped to 68%. And that's because their voice was included in, and they were, in the kind of opinion map, and they were responding to other people's voices. And that's how conversation should work. But it's kind of like it's an interesting civilizational challenge that hasn't been possible to address. How as a collective can we really hear each other and see where we agree and make good decisions for us? So I do feel a lot of hope. I'm glad you struck that tone.
And it's a perfect note to end on. And I know that you're both extraordinarily busy people. You have a lot to do. So for our listeners, you can learn more about the We the People project. You can learn more about Jigsaw in the show notes. We'll have links to that. And of course, we'll be back with another episode of On the Ballot where we will listen to you, hopefully. Give us the feedback that you think that we need to hear. And of course, you can follow us wherever you get podcasts. We're on YouTube as well. And until then, I'm Norm Leahy, and I will see you in the digital pages of Ballotpedia. Take care.